Hi there, everybody. I think I'm live. I'm not really sure. I can't even, I don't know. Anyway, my name is Alicia Wanstall-Burke. I am a finalist in this year's SPFBO competition, the self-published fantasy blogger. My entry for this year is Blood of Heirs. This is my debut fantasy novel. This is a proof copy that doesn't normally come with that really ugly banner across the front of it. This bad boy was published in October of 2018. It had a pretty quiet first year, to be honest, which was fine. You know, I had some stuff going on. I was a bit busy. In November of last year, the sequel Legacy of Ghosts came out. I love this cover. I like to cuddle it every now and then just because it's cute. My amazing cover artist, Pen Astridge, did both of these. And I've got some really great friends who did some quotes on the back. This is the hardcover. Oh, I love that sound. And if you're a map kind of person, which I know some people who read fantasy are, that's my map. It's a colour one though. You won't get a colour one in the book. That one took a very long time to draw. A lot of the stuff in the center of the map was part of a world that I created when I was much, much younger, when I was in high school. And I wrote this whole book and a half that was actually not very good. So it got shelved, and from that grew Blood of Heirs and Legacy of Ghosts. And I'm supposed to be working on book 3 at the moment, but you know, there's a global pandemic, there's a couple of things on my mind, and that has kind of slowed down the writing process. So it will be out, probably not the end of this year, maybe next year. So if anyone wants a map, you know, I can send them maps. I have print copies of the maps. I also make maps. I can draw maps for other people. I haven't had to yet, but I will. So the reading that I'm going to do today, I'm assuming that's why you're all here. You haven't come to, you know, just hang out for no reason, is actually quite a way into Blood of Heirs, but it's not too spoilery, I don't think. And it's kind of fun. So let's see how we go. Their meal started and finished in silence, with neither of them offering to light a fire against the cold and dark. A couple of candles stolen from the farmhouse lit a small circle within the confines of the stall, a softly glowing orb with Ran and Sasha sitting at its edges. Ran's magic shifted under his skin, hot and itchy, fueled by anxiety, ready at a moment's notice to burst forth and defend him. As useful as it was in an emergency, he hated the idea of his power moving as it pleased, without his control. What if he woke in the night and lashed out with it, only to find he'd attacked Sasha as she slept? What if he had a nightmare and discharged it without him realizing it? He could burn the barn to the ground in a matter of minutes, incinerating them both in the process. Shuddering at the thought, he forced his power back into the recess it crawled from, working hard to hold it there. Across the circle of light, Sasha fidgeted with strands of hay, twisting and weaving them into bands of plaits. She might have been making a basket or a bag, or just passing the time as the silence stretched between them. Ran's untrained eyes couldn't tell. Who is she? Sasha asked quietly, her voice cutting the stillness and making Ran jump. Who? He stared at her with wide eyes. Sasha was the only woman he'd seen in months. The girl you talked to in your dreams. Their eyes met, and there was nothing Ran could do to escape her scrutiny and nowhere to hide. She watched him for a lie, waiting for him to try and deceive her. Ran cleared his throat and shifted awkwardly. There really was no way to explain it without sounding like a crazy person. Sasha probably thought he was mad already. A little more wasn't going to make much difference. She's a ghost. Why does she haunt you? She asked, reaching for another strand of hay and continuing her weaving, her eyes on his face. I didn't kill her, if that's what you're implying, he countered sourly. He ran his hand through his hair and prepared the story, searching for words to describe a night he'd tried so hard to forget. On my way back to Usman from the disputed territory, I stumbled on a place full of magic, and she was there. The magic triggered my powers, and she's been following me ever since. And that's why you fled Usman? Because of the magic, yes. A sad laugh escaped him, and he shook his head. I didn't get a chance to tell anyone about the ghost. Doubt it would have mattered. Her hands paused for a moment while she watched him, and not for the first time, Rand wished he could tell what she was thinking. Our people have a hard time with magic. Sasha's eyes fell to her weaving as she spoke. We don't like it because we don't understand it. Not so long ago, healers were treated with the same suspicion, our hands able to work wonders that normal folk couldn't manage. Healing and magic are the same in a way. They both work with forces the eyes often can't see. We treat coughs with leaves and broken bones with creams, and in the minds of folk, it shouldn't work like that. Frustration roiled in Rand's stomach. Why mistreat someone trying to help you? That's just stupid. People fear what they don't understand and hate what they can't control. So why help me? He asked, letting the question hang in the air like smoke. Why risk yourself aiding a magic user who escaped the Duke's justice? Sasha put her weaving in her lap and let her hands fall still. I'm not an only child. I had 2 brothers who I haven't seen since they were toddlers. My father sent them away without a word of warning or a moment to say farewell. He said he caught them playing in the woodshed, flicking sparks of power between them like normal children might pass a ball. She bit her lip, her eyes wandering to the small candle. That was 10 years ago, maybe even longer. I've no idea where they went or if they survived the journey. My mother never forgave him for it, never speaks more than a few words to him. She'd probably like to see him dead if she thought she could get away with it. The weeping face of Duchess Meredith flashed in Rand's mind, her red, watery eyes heavy with disappointment and sorrow. How many mothers in the duchy had their children taken away from them, never to be seen or heard from again? How many husbands and wives shared their beds with this sadness, blame wedged between them like an unwelcome visitor? Rand couldn't imagine his mother publicly railing against his father. She knew her place and her role as his wife. But in private, when they spoke the truths in their hearts, he wondered if she, like Sasha's mother, could ever forgive her husband. I'm sorry for your brothers, Sasha. She shrugged and returned to her weaving. No point crying over things that can't be helped. When I was young, I thought if I learned to heal, I could find a cure for magic and bring them home. I dreamed I could go into the wilds and find them, fix what might be broken, and bring them back to my mother. Rand waited for her to continue, but a small tear streaking down her cheek told him she didn't have the words to go on. There isn't a cure, is there? She shook her head and yanked hard on the weaving, pouring her anger into the strands, tying it into the braid with all the force her fingers could manage. He decided she wasn't making anything useful, like a bag or a basket. She was binding her pain and sorrow into a prison of straw and grass. And that's why you helped me? I told you when we left Gorpin, magic doesn't give you a choice. You have it or you don't. I wasn't about to let my father do to you what he did to my brothers. Well, thank you, he murmured, bowing as deeply as he could while sitting on the stall floor. I'm sorry I've kept you awake with my mutterings. With a wave of her hand, Sasha dismissed his worry. She sounds like she keeps you busy. In any case, it's not wise to ignore the shades who haunt us. They get annoyed. That caught Rand's attention with 2 hands. What do you know about ghosts? At that, she gave him a sad smile. We all have ghosts who walk in our shadows, Rand. Just happens some are louder than others. When Rand heard the shuffle of feet on snow outside the barn, his first thought turned to Sasha. Was it dawn, or had she gone to relieve herself in the night? Reality slapped the thought from his mind, recalling that he'd locked the barn so tight that it was unlikely she could get out without his help. His eyes opened, but the rest of him remained still as stone under the horse blankets and canvas. The candles were out, tucked away in their bags for another night, and the darkness of the barn was complete. Sasha slumbered beside him, rolled in her blankets and breathing the calm rhythm of sleep. She hadn't heard the footsteps. He listened hard, straining against the sound of his beating heart to discern the source. To say he heard normal footsteps was inaccurate. It was more like a scraping sound than actual steps, like feet dragged through the snow, hardly lifted above it. or perhaps more like crawling, as if the source crouched low and shifted itself with effort. It continued for a moment, moving around the perimeter of the barn. It travelled down the long wall towards the door at the far end, hovering there and moving back and forth. The doors did not move. The sound began to shift again, easing itself along the other wall, this time towards the end where Ran lay beside Sasha in their stall. His right ear rang with the noise, and all other sound fading to nothing as he focused his energy on the thing outside. It seemed to pass within inches of his head, and the thickness of the barn wall did nothing to soothe the fear creeping into his chest, tightening a hand around his hammering heart. To his left, in the snow beside the wall, the sound of movement stopped. It wasn't an uneasy pause, when one might shuffle their feet and wonder which way to go next. It was a dead stop, as if it had found exactly what it was looking for. The thing outside drew a deep breath through its nose, sucking in the scent of everything around it. It came closer to the wall, sniffing and breathing heavily, following a trail no eye could see. Then Rand remembered the sound from a hazy place in his memory. He'd heard it before, at the bottom of the mine shaft where he'd fallen not so long ago. Sweat beaded on Rand's forehead. His palms were clammy and his fingers itched for his knife. He didn't dare move to grab it, his heart and lungs already working hard as he tried to minimize his breath in case the creature heard. Sniffing and shuffling steps moved from near his feet towards his head, quicker and more insistent as it approached, then stopped again. It drew another long, deep breath and exhaled with a satisfied sigh that sent a cold shiver through every bone in Rand's body. A wet splattering sound pattered against the wall of the barn, and the snow hissed as hot liquid hit the ground. It can't seriously be taking a piss. He screwed up his nose at the acrid stink wafting up through the panels of the wall, stinging his nostrils and turning his stomach. The creature finished relieving itself and shuffled away quickly, retreating across the snow until Rand's ears lost the sound of its awkward steps to the night, a howling scream echoing along the valley to signal its departure. Not for the first time, he thanked the gods that Sasha remained asleep. It took a moment for the creature's behaviour to make sense despite his fear. With the foul stench of urine still burning his nose, Rand's heart skipped before thumping back into a frantic beat. Whatever the creature was, it had marked its territory like a dog, claiming the place and sending a clear message to any others who might pass this way. This barn, and whatever lay inside it, belonged to it. Its territory, its property, its food. That was terrifying. I hope you're all aware of how absolutely terrifying that was. Is there any questions? What was the inspiration for the World of Blood Bears? So the Southlands are inspired by where I've been living in central Queensland in Australia. Obviously, Queensland's in Australia. And there are a lot of landmarks that I used from around that local area to build into the book. The cane where Lydon's family live is a place called Wolfang Peak near Claremont. There's also the Blackdown Tablelands, which are near Bluff and Blackwater in central Queensland on the Tropic of Capricorn. Tablelands feature very heavily in this book, mostly because they feature very heavily in the landscape of central Queensland. I mean, it's very flat out there, except for these tablelands that kind of jump up out of they look like they're just, out of nothing. There's also a gorge down south of a place called Rollston. It's called Carnarvon Gorge, and it features a lot more in Legacy of Ghosts. So I've tried to kind of pull these places in, and there's also, the weather patterns and the climate patterns that come through dry seasons, wet seasons, not having rain in winter, all of your rain coming in sort of monsoon troughs and that sort of stuff into the hotter months of the year. So I hadn't really seen that in fantasy books before. I'm sure it's out there, but it wasn't something I'd come across. And there was definitely a big push within the industry to kind of diversify. So I just thought, why not? It's right there. I hope that answers the question. How many books are planned for the series? There's 2 at the moment. There's 1 more coming for this trilogy. After that, there'll be at least 2 books in the world, or set in the islands off the coast in the archipelago. Those islands are based on the Whitsunday Islands, which are on the Great Barrier Reef. It's kind of like pirates and smugglers and spies on the Great Barrier Reef, which is kind of cool. That's a really fun book. So that'll be The Smuggler's Daughter, and then hopefully after that, The Queen of Thieves. But I don't know if that's only going to be 2 books or if it's going to be more. I'd just like to get this one finished first, and then I'll attack that one. Hopefully that answers everyone's questions. I don't think there's any more. Of course, if anyone wants to ask anything later, they can. But for now, I'm going to go and bury myself under something very alcoholic. Bye, everybody.